You are already standing at the front of the classroom when the noise starts to swell again. Chairs scrape, voices overlap. Someone at the back is testing how long they can ignore you. You hold a marker you are not ready to use, watching a room that does not recognize you yet. This is your first day as a rookie teacher. No one has told you directly, but you understand it quickly. Authority is not assigned here. It is measured, and you do not have any. At this level, your responsibility is simple on paper. Deliver the lesson. Maintain order. Follow the schedule. In reality, you are learning to exist under constant observation. Students measure your reactions. Senior teachers pass by your door and glance in without stopping. You begin to notice that control is not about volume. It is about timing. Every correction you make costs you attention. Every hesitation costs you more. By the end of the week, you realize that being liked and being effective are not aligned. You start choosing which one to lose. You move into the next phase without ceremony. The system does not announce progress. It simply stops resisting you as much. You are now operating as a structured instructor. The room still tests you, but less openly. You have learned routines: entry, silence, instruction, transition. You repeat them until they begin to hold on their own. Your responsibility expands. You are no longer reacting. You are preempting. Your power increases in small ways. A look in the right direction reduces noise. A pause in your sentence resets attention. You begin to understand that most behavior is predictable if you remove variation, but the cost becomes visible. You start thinking in patterns instead of individuals. A student raises a hand, and you assess not curiosity, but timing. You begin to filter personalities into categories that are easier to manage. The classroom becomes quieter. Your perception becomes narrower. Weeks pass, and the environment shifts with you. You are given access to planning rooms, shared data, performance reports. You step into the role of a classroom operator. Now your responsibility is not just delivery, but outcomes, test scores, behavioral records, progress metrics. You are expected to adjust. Your power grows through information. You know who disrupts and when. You know who influences others. You reposition seats not randomly, but strategically. The room begins to follow a structure you designed. You experience your first success that feels controlled. A difficult group stabilizes under your system. You are acknowledged briefly in a meeting that moves on without pause. But something changes. You stop questioning whether a method is fair. You only measure if it works. You enforce rules you did not create, knowing they are uneven. You justify it as necessary. The line between teaching and managing begins to blur. You no longer notice when it disappears. As expectations rise, you are moved again. The shared spaces give way to smaller rooms, quieter conversations. You become a lead educator. Your responsibility now includes other teachers. You review their classes, suggest adjustments, correct inefficiencies. You are no longer only inside your own classroom. You are inside multiple systems at once. Your power is indirect but wider. You influence how others structure their rooms. You recommend interventions that reshape entire groups of students. Decisions you make are implemented by people who trust your judgment more than their own. You begin to see the school not as separate classes, but as a network of controlled environments. The cost deepens. You stop forming attachments to specific students because you are rotated too often to maintain them. Conversations become shorter, more functional. You notice that when a teacher struggles, your instinct is not to support, but to optimize. You sleep less, not because of workload alone, but because your mind continues running scenarios. You replay decisions, not emotionally, but structurally. What could have been more efficient? What variable was missed? You are promoted again, though no one uses that word. You are assigned a private office with a door that closes fully. Screens replace whiteboards. You are now a discipline coordinator. Your responsibility is order at scale. You handle escalations, suspensions, parent interventions, system-wide behavior policies. Your power becomes explicit. Students you have never taught know your name. When you enter a room, conversations lower without instruction. You decide consequences that alter trajectories. A single report you file changes how a student is treated across all classes. You begin to understand that control is most effective when it is distant. The cost becomes difficult to ignore, but you do not address it. You speak less during the day. You observe more. You stop reacting to stories, excuses, explanations, personal details. They all compress into data points. You recognize patterns of failure before they fully form. You intervene earlier. With less discussion, you justify it as prevention. The building feels different now. You move through hallways without being stopped. Meetings become smaller, more selective. You are included in conversations that do not reach others. You are moved into the role of vice principal. Your responsibility expands to the entire system. Scheduling, staffing, performance, discipline. You are balancing variables that cannot all be satisfied. You begin making decisions that benefit the structure at the expense of individuals. You do it consistently enough that it no longer feels like a decision. Your power is comprehensive. You can remove a teacher from a class. You can restructure an entire grade level. You can implement policies that reshape daily behavior across the school. You no longer need to enter classrooms to control them. Your influence is embedded in the system itself. The cost is isolation. Conversations with staff become measured. They do not speak to you the same way. Students avoid eye contact, not out of disrespect, but recognition. You notice that silence follows you more often than noise. You begin to prefer it. Eventually, you reach the final position. The office is larger, but emptier. The windows face outward, toward a city that does not know what happens inside. You are now the principal. Your responsibility is total. Every outcome, every failure, every success is traced back to you. You set the tone that others enforce. You design the system that others operate within. You decide what is acceptable and what is removed. Your power is complete within these walls. You can shape culture without speaking directly to those affected. You can maintain order through policies that no one questions because they have always existed. The school runs according to structures you put in place long ago. The cost is final. You no longer experience the classroom. You no longer see individual moments of change. You observe trends, not people. You measure success and stability, not growth. The noise that overwhelmed you is now distant, contained behind layers of control. You sit in a quiet office at the end of the day, reviewing reports that reduce an entire building into numbers and patterns. You realize that the person who once stood at the front of a loud classroom, waiting to be recognized, no longer exists in any functional way. You did not lose control of the system. You became the system that no longer needs to be seen.